Pastor Michael thought he could walk away from the ancient book, but the moment he refused to pay its price, the miracles began disappearing. Pastor Michael had made a decision. He would never sacrifice an innocent person, not for fame, not for power, not even for the miracles that had made him famous. He slammed the ancient book shut and ran out of the underground chamber. The next morning, he carried the book far away from the church. He set it on fire. He watched the flames surround it until nothing remained but smoke. Pastor Michael finally breathed. It's over. But hours later, when the fire had completely died, he returned to the ashes. The book was still there, untouched. Not a single page had burned. Terrified, he took it to the deepest part of the river outside Blackport City. He threw it into the water. Then he whispered, "This ends today." The next morning, the book was back, beneath the church altar, exactly where he had found it. Pastor Michael locked the underground chamber. He took the key. He placed a heavy padlock on the door and promised himself he would never go down there again. The following night, he heard something downstairs. He slowly walked toward the chamber. The padlock was lying on the floor. The door was already open, and the book was waiting. But Pastor Michael didn't touch it. He didn't have to, because something else had already happened. The miracles stopped, not gradually, immediately. The blind woman who had once screamed, "I can see," opened her eyes the next morning and found herself in darkness again. The little boy who had finally said, "Daddy," could no longer speak. The man who had walked across Pastor Michael's altar collapsed in the street, one after another. Every miracle Pastor Michael had performed was undone. The same people who once called him God's greatest servant now returned to his church, angry. "You deceived us. You lied to us. You called yourself a man of God." News spread throughout Blackport City. The church emptied. The crowds disappeared. The cameras stopped coming. The offerings became almost nothing. Within days, Pastor Michael had lost everything: his fame, his church, his reputation, his miracles, everything broken. He finally returned to the underground chamber. The ancient book was already open. Pastor Michael stood there, too exhausted to run. Slowly, letters began appearing across the page, written in fresh blood, power borrowed. Pastor Michael stepped backwards. Another sentence appeared: "Must be repaid." His breathing became heavier. Then, 2 more words appeared: 2 lives. Pastor Michael froze. The final sentence slowly appeared beneath them: "For every generation healed." He fell to his knees. "No." He shook his head. "No, I can't." He closed the book. He prayed. He fasted. He begged God for another way. Nothing changed. Then his wife became sick. Not an ordinary sickness. Doctors couldn't explain it. Every test came back normal. Yet, she became weaker every day. Then, one afternoon, his little son collapsed. His body burned with fever. Medicine stopped working. Prayer stopped working. Nothing helped. Pastor Michael sat beside his son's bed, watching the child struggle to breathe. And suddenly, he understood. The debt wasn't waiting anymore. It had started collecting from the people he loved most. That night, Pastor Michael sat beside his unconscious wife. He looked at his struggling son. Tears filled his eyes. Then he whispered, "If I refuse," he looked at his son, "they'll die for a long time." He said nothing. Then something inside him broke. Not his faith, not his love for his family, his resolve. He had spent his entire life wanting to save people. Now, he was about to become the reason 2 innocent people would die. The following Sunday, Pastor Michael stood before his congregation, smiling, preaching, praying, blessing people, as if nothing had happened. Nobody knew that the previous night, he had been crying beside his dying family. When the service ended, the congregation slowly began leaving. Pastor Michael's assistant approached 2 pregnant women. He smiled. "Pastor Michael, would like to pray privately with both of you." The women looked at each other. One smiled. Maybe God has finally remembered us. They waited. The church became empty. The doors were locked. The lights were turned off. Only Pastor Michael and the two women remained. Pastor Michael forced a smile. His hands were trembling. He whispered, "Please, follow me." The women thought he was taking them to a private prayer room. Instead, he led them beneath the church, into the underground chamber. The heavy stone door slowly closed behind them. Neither woman knew that was the last time they would ever see the light of day. Silence. Then, a terrified scream echoed from beneath the church. "Pastor!" "No!" Another voice cried out, "Please, not my baby!" And above them, the church remained completely silent. To be continued. Follow Tales by Bun for episode 4 and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from?